Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show Dr. Arthur Laffer, who is an economist. In fact, he kind of triggered a worldwide tax-cutting movement in the 1980s. So for those of us who like low taxes, I guess maybe we have Dr. Laffer to thank. Do we, in fact, have you to thank, Dr. Laffer?
I don't know if you do or not, but I loved it. It was wonderful, and I enjoyed working and cutting taxes and creating prosperity the world over. It was really fun.
Okay, so as I'm sure, or maybe you've heard from time to time, there are people who say this just doesn't make sense. They talk about your Laffer Curve, and then they start laughing. They say, how is it that if you take in less money by cutting taxes, you're supposed to make more money? So before we dive into some of the deeper questions, is there logic in what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, sure there is. They're conflating tax rates with tax revenues. And very seriously, at zero tax rates, you're not going to collect any money. If there are no taxes collected on any income, there won't be any revenue collected. Likewise, at 100% tax rates, or even higher, if every time you went to the office, instead of getting a check, you got a bill, sooner or later everyone would quit working and there would be no tax revenues either. So there are these 2 points where you have zero tax revenues, and then as you raise tax rates from zero tax rate, you're going to start collecting more and more revenues, and as you lower them from 100%, you're going to collect more and more revenues, and there's some sort of point somewhere in the middle there where you get the maximum amount of revenues, and that's sort of the Laffer curve. It relates tax rates to total revenues, which really is what you need to do, and there's no logic, to be honest with you, relating tax rates directly to revenues. If you increase tax rates 10%, I guarantee you will not get 10% more revenue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just want to clarify, because when you said look in the middle and you'll see a point where I guess they maximize revenues, you're not referring to actually a 50% tax, are you?
No, it's not. It may not. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything in there. It can be very high at 80%. It can be very low at 20%. It might be 50%, but that's only under specific circumstances. By the way, it depends very much on the time horizon you're looking at. The shorter the time horizon, the higher that rate will be. The longer the time horizon, the lower that rate will be. And, it depends on a lot of other things. But what it is, it's a pedagogic device that explains to politicians that there are two effects tax rates have on revenues. One is the amount of tax you collect per dollar of tax base. That's the tax rate there. But then there's also the economic effect, which is if you raise tax rates, you'll reduce the tax base. And these two effects always work in the opposite direction. I mean, they always do. To use an analogy, a business can overprice its product and lose money. It can underprice its product and lose money, but there's a certain price in there where it makes profits, and there probably is a price that they maximize profits.
So let's clarify. You're not in the Laffer curve, you're not proposing a specific tax rate. You are simply defining the fact that at 0% tax, the government makes zero, and that 100% tax, the government will probably make zero because no one will want to work. And there is just simply a point that may change depending on a variety of factors at which the government could maximize its revenue, presuming that's its actual goal.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be its actual goal. But yes, that's it. And the point is also is that when you change tax rates, like let's say we're going to raise taxes in the U.S., if you raise tax rates, you're not going to collect that much more in revenue. You might even lose revenue, depending on where the tax rate is now. So what it does is give you a different way of looking at tax rates and the correct way to look at them.
How would you recommend knowing what to do? Because ultimately the politicians, with their good-heartedness and their will to help the American people, or the leaders of any country who always have the people's best interest at heart, how can they know what that magic Laffer number is?
Well, they don't. But what you can know is how to get there. For example, the larger the tax base and the lower the rate, the more likely it is that an increase in rates will raise revenues. The narrower the tax base, the higher the rate, the less likely it is an increase will be to raise revenues. So you can start looking at taxes, and what you never want to have is a low base, high rate tax, which is what we have on death taxes in the U.S., and we have it on corporate profits taxes. These are exactly the places you don't want to have high tax rates. Now, a Social Security tax, which is a very broad-based tax with few exceptions, those you can have higher rates and still collect more money. But it gives you a framework of how to design a tax code that actually works.
So can we assume that this is all theoretical? In other words, are you talking, the United States has a progressive tax model that presumably the more you earn, the higher rate you're going to pay. But on the curve, you're not really showing that. Are you referring to an average tax, or is it ideally a flat income tax?
No, it should be at all rates. I mean, when you look at that on the highest rates, let's just do your progressive tax. The one tax, if you're looking for revenues, the one tax you should not raise is the highest rate, because that has the greatest disincentive effect, and these people have all the resources to evade, avoid, and otherwise not report taxable income. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that whenever the U.S. has raised the highest tax rate, revenues from the top 1% of income earners has declined as a share of GDP. Every time they've cut the highest tax rate, tax revenues from the top 1% of income earners as a share of GDP have gone up. So that's exactly what the principles of the curve show you. If you want to get revenues, you don't want to raise tax rates on the highest income earners, period.
We're talking with the father of supply-side economics, as Dr. Arthur Laffer is often referred to. He developed the Laffer Curve, which actually became very popular, I guess, in the Reagan era. I want to focus a little bit more on this issue of not raising taxes on the highest tax brackets, the people who are earning the most. What about the question of fairness? Don't you think that these people should pay their fair share?
Well, maybe. But if you don't get it, it's not fair share, is it now? I mean, rich people have all sorts of availability open to them. They have wealth to be able to hire lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists. They also have enough wealth to hire congressmen, senators, presidents, favor grabbers, and all these other people. They also have all sorts of ways of getting around taxes. They can change the location of their income. They can change the timing of their income. They can change the volume of their income. They can change the composition of their income. And they are the single group in the society that is the most adept at changing the tax bills they pay given a change in tax rates. So they are highly sensitive to tax rates. And you just aren't going to get their money. And if you aren't going to get their money, you may think it's fair, but you're not going to get their money, and you cause the economy to collapse in the aftermath.
Mm-hmm. Except in extenuating circumstances like a war. Is that
sometimes,
true?
For
and
a
that's
very
what you
short
said
period
before,
of time.
Short term. Right, short term, you can take people's money. Okay.
Yeah, short term and with certain circumstances, extending circumstances, yes, you will. I mean, during the war, the rich people paid a lot of taxes, and they were very willing to do it because they had the money. But during normal times, Warren Buffett, I calculated, pays about 6/100% of his income in taxes, all legal. But he doesn't pay taxes on increases in unrealized capital gains. He doesn't pay taxes on the gift to his children's foundations, and I could go on and on and on. He uses every legal loophole there is and pays only about $7 million in taxes, and his income was about $12 billion in 2010. Now that's the
Sorry,
type
that income,
of
is that
thing
including capital gains?
Well, unrealized capital gains, he didn't pay any taxes on it.
That's not really income, then. That's a different,
it sure is.
It's a
I mean, income is your change in wealth, plus what you spend, plus what you give away. That's your income. Simon definition of income. I'll take increases in my wealth every day of the week in unrealized capital gains and feel a lot better about it.
But
that's income.
I'm not familiar with any governments that tax unrealized capital gains.
No, but the unrealized capital gains is exactly one of those loopholes. Mm-hmm. And what you should do in a comprehensive tax is tax a person's spending on goods and services, on passing it on, all the gifts, and also on the increase in that person's wealth. That is your real income. That's the Simon definition of income, and it's the correct one to tax. But otherwise, you'll do what he does, which he owns all of his stocks under the shield of Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway will buy and sell stocks, but he won't buy and sell Berkshire Hathaway. And so all of his wealth in Berkshire Hathaway has never been taxed. And believe me, it makes him a very powerful man.
Well, it's like,
and all the others do it too. All the others do it too.
When you say all the others, I understand. I don't feel that
Fortune 400, the top 400 wealthiest people.
Yeah. So listen, guys like you and me, right? We're doing okay. We have investment companies. We give a few speeches, write a few books. I personally don't feel that I'm able to use all those tools. And when they raise taxes, I just bend over and pay.
I'll bet you use a lot more of them than you really imagine. Do you own your own company?
I do.
Can you use some of the expenses that you can handle and pass through there? For example, can you employ your kids and do other stuff like that? All legal. But I do that. I mean, when you do all the stuff there with a company, you can define benefit plans, you can describe things and make them so they fit you very well. And I'm not saying it's anything wrong with doing that. That's just what people do. But believe me when I tell you, you can really change your tax burden very substantially by manipulating the tax codes and the tax regulations. Mm-hmm. I mean, you really can do that. And, I moved from California to Tennessee for one very simple reason. There's no income tax or death tax in Tennessee. None. Mm-hmm. I was able to buy my house in Belmead with my first year's tax savings. Now, that's just tax sheltering. I did the same income. I don't have to be in any one location or not. But that just is hugely. I can change the location of my income. I can change the composition of my income. I can change the timing of my income. I can choose when I pay myself and when I don't. Before the Obama tax increases went into effect, I had a huge bonus I paid myself from the firm with borrowing a lot of debt. And then the next year I didn't pay myself any income. Perfectly legal. But I was able to shift the tax burden dramatically by changing the timing of my income. And so these other guys can really do it. Believe me, if I can do it, they can do it 10 times more.
Listen, we have to talk after the interview when the microphone's off. I think I'd like to get a little...
No, but you know exactly what I mean.
No, okay,
you pay taxes in New York. You pay taxes in New York?
I'm based in Israel, so no.
Oh, good for you. Well, if you were based in New York, I would suggest you move. Florida! Yeah. Why do all the people move to Florida?
What's it? Well, why don't all the people move to the no income tax states? Or are they doing
They do. They do. My book on the wealth of states, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of States with your friend, Rex Sinkfield. He and I did that book together. We show the migration patterns. The 9 states with no income tax in the U.S. have way outperformed the 9 states with the highest income tax rates, both in population growth and migration and real gross state product and also in tax revenue.
So if they have no income tax, how do they pay for teachers and nurses and police?
Well, they have property taxes, they have sales taxes, but they also don't have as many unemployed people because they're fast growing and have lots of jobs, so they don't need the welfare. And their schools are far better. Texas, I have a comparison, a big chapter in my one book on comparing Texas with California. It's amazing how much better run Texas is than California. It has better education, has less welfare, all of that stuff, and no taxes, effectively, no income tax. So they have a corporate tax, but they have no personal income taxes.
Well, don't they get all the money from oil? Isn't that the bottom line with Texas?
No. They do get a little bit of money from oil, but not as much. And the reason California doesn't get its money from oil is they prohibit fracking. They prohibit drilling. It's amazing how little revenue you can get from something you prohibit.
Yeah, well, that'll stop it. I guess that's why they legalize marijuana.
Right in its tracks.
Yeah. All right. It's fascinating. This has been a very, very macroeconomic discussion about, and hopefully all the politicians are listening and getting some good advice, because I'm certainly for lower taxes. But I just want to clarify one thing, and then I'll let you go. You're not necessarily saying that lowering taxes is all the time the right thing. You're saying that that there is a sweet spot in the Laffer Curve where taxes can maximize government revenue, again, if that's your goal. But it's not that when people say, oh, the Laffer Curve, he just wants to cut taxes on the rich. That's not what you're saying. Is that correct?
No, it's not the purpose of the Laffer Curve at all. What you can say is we tax speeders to get them to stop speeding. We tax smokers to get them to stop smoking. Ask yourself, why then do we tax people who earn income? Why do we tax people who employ other people? Why do we tax companies that make great products at low cost and have a lot of profits? We don't do that to get them to earn less, to employ less, and to have less profits. We do it to collect the money. Mm-hmm. But don't for a moment think, Douglas, that those same effects aren't there that are there with smokers and with speeders. They are. What you need to do is collect your taxes in the least damaging fashion and spend the proceeds in the most beneficial fashion. That's what a good government actually does. And that's not what my government does. My rich people are the greatest people on earth. They pay for all sorts of public services. You don't want to make them the enemies. You want to take them out to dinner at night, send them birthday cards. These are wonderful, wonderful people to have. And if you treat them nicely, they'll treat you nicely. But if you make them the enemies, believe me, they have the resources to really do you under.
All right, and we will watch to see what happens. Hopefully, we're going to see in the new administration, we'll see a lot of great changes in the economy. Dr. Laffer,
let's hope.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch about this. I want to thank you very much for your time. Tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Well, I'm really not very literate, if you can be honest with you, Douglas. I don't have a computer. I don't do emails. I'm an old person. I drool at night. I'm 76 years old. No, but you can always, anyone can get me at, I do have an email that I don't use very often, but drlaffer@laffer.com. If anyone wants to contact me for books or anything else and see what I'm doing, I'd love to have them email me. But I don't do Twitter or any of that stuff.
All right, so we will put a link to that. We'll also put a link to some of your books at the show notes of the show. I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk today, and I hope we'll get to speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Douglas.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.